I'm Ingrid Blackburn, and today my good friend Ardyth Percy-Robb and I collaborated to bring you 10 amazing Christmas ideas. Let's dive right in. Ardyth and I love to do Christmas cards, period. We love to do Christmas cards. I mean, we do a lot more than just that, but I had to have a couple quick ones, and this is a quick one. It's also awesome. I think you will really enjoy it. This is one of those 3D embossing folders by scenic. I love this folder. It's the first time I've ever used a 3D folder, just putting it through my Big Shot right there. I made sure to lightly spritz the paper as recommended by the company, and look at that. I mean, it was really popping off the page way more than a regular embossing folder. There it is in white. You could very easily mass produce this card. This is a fabulous mass produced Christmas card. Taking the premium pigment ink by scrapbook.com in white. I love how I can put that lid into the base. That's one of my favorite things. You hear me say it over and over again. Very lightly tapping that onto the snowflakes because you don't want to smush this. You can see I'm not smushing my pad onto that. I don't want to crush the 3D effect. I also just kind of wanted the tips and the tops of the snowflakes to have this white color. I decided I wanted a little bit more than I was able to get by smushing down. Now I still think smushing is a great start, and then coming in with the dome tool. I'm also being very careful and cognizant not to press too hard. I'm keeping it relatively light. I know I'm going fast here, but that's because it's sped up. Keep in mind that I do use very, very light pressure when I'm doing things like this. Because I don't want to get that all over. I only really wanted it on the snowflakes, not necessarily on the background. Next up, we've got to make some sparkly powder. What do you do when you're out of sparkly embossing powder? You make your own. Isn't that beautiful? I just love that. Now that would be pretty as it is. So taking some clear embossing powder, just putting in a little container, and then taking some really fine, this is the Pure Sheen, I think this is the diamond glitter, and just mixing it together. You want to do kind of a little more than half clear embossing powder, maybe almost 2/3 to glitter. So I added a little bit more there. Love those little containers. Using that Nuvo spoon tool, I love that thing too, because I don't have to actually touch the glitter because that's not my thing. Of course, I'm wearing it anyway. Sprinkling that on top of this, because we're using white pigment ink, that's going to latch onto that. And always start from behind, especially when working with glitter, because it will help activate that embossing powder to hold that glitter down so it doesn't fly off your project. Taking a little bit of really skinny Post-it tape here, and I'm going to kind of mask off the Believe from this giant sentiment. And this is from the Big and Bold Sentiments by scrapbook.com. This is a fabulous stamp set, 3 really huge sentiments, and you'll see me use this in another video soon. And taking some Juniper Mist, I just wanted the bottom half of this. You see that awesome Believe up there, but I just wanted in the magic of Christmas. And I'm going to lop off the in, as you see here on this final project. That's it. It's done. We're on to the next one. I touched on the double stenciling technique just recently in a stencil video where I shared 10 different techniques. This is the ornament stencil by Create a Smile. It comes with a masking stencil, which is just the shapes, as well as more detailed. I'm using some masking paper, and this is sticker paper. I buy this from online labels, buy a big package online. It's much more cost effective, and I can get larger size sheets. So you can see here I'm just kind of positioning my mask where I want it. I have it taped down. I love using sticker paper because it doesn't leave a lot of residue behind, which is very helpful when you're going to do some embossing. We're going to do some ink blending, and this project is really special. Like I said, I just touched on double stenciling the other day, but we're going to take it to a whole different level today. And this project combines lots of techniques, first one being ink blending. And I had the coordinating stencil, but I wanted to take something different in, and I've linked this particular product below. This is a beautiful, beautiful cover plate done by Catherine Pooler. It's actually designed by Julie Mogford, and I have sealed it with glazing medium. I will link to a video on how I do that, and so I use it over and over and over again as a stencil. And I just kind of did a little bit of a fade out with some sauna ink in the underneath color. And here I'm coming in with Mandarin Spice. These are Spa Colors by Catherine Pooler, concentrating it in the bottom left corner. And I'm going to also fade that out just like I did with the yellow, so that I have this really kind of vintage feel to it. And look how beautiful that is. Important to wipe down your stencil and your area before our next step. Taking the premium clear ink by scrapbook.com, which is their embossing pad. Love snapping the lids into the bases. It makes it so much easier to hold these ink pads. This has very quickly become my go-to embossing ink pad. Going to use some Nuvo clear embossing powder to just cover that, and then we're going to heat set that before moving on to the other two ornaments that we're going to create. I'm going to create a scene here, and this is just a beautifully double stenciled ornament, and it's just on a piece of white paper. It looks like nothing right now. Wait till you see the finished result. So we're going to come back in here now with some hot tub. Also going to do a little bit of fade out and concentrate the color to the bottom right now, which is the opposite of the top. And that gives the project a little bit of balance. You want to think about these little tiny things as you're creating. So now I've gone ahead and cleaned off my stencil, and I'm going to go ahead and add that clear embossing powder, not embossing powder, clear embossing ink. And then I'm going to add a little bit of some sparkly gold. I'm going to heat set that with my brand new Wagner heat tool. This is new to the market. It's only been out a few months. I love this tool. And then on the top ornament, you see it has a different design. I've kind of lowered it a little bit to create a triangle. I've got some sugared lavender that I used. It's a beautiful color. And I'm going to take another cover plate by Catherine Pooler, also designed by Julie Mogford, also sealed with glazed medium. I can't tell you how many times I have used these two stencils. Sealing, when you're taking the time to cut out something so intricate, take the time to seal it with glazed medium. It's absolutely fabulous. Taking some Sangria, which is one of the newer Catherine Pooler inks, and going to just full on cover this. So it's going to be very different from the other two, but wait till you see how this turned out. We're really taking double stenciling to a whole different level here. I mean, it's really beautiful. One project used the actual coordinating stencil that came with it, and the other two using some cover plates. Going to do the same thing here. We're going to end up embossing it in clear, but before we do that, we're going to do a little anti-static. Add a little bit of ink just in the corners on the bottom at the very top. And this is actually a very, very detailed tutorial, and I have the detailed tutorial over on the Patreon community. If you're interested in that, the link is also below. Because this is just a really long project. Normally it took me about 35 minutes to make this project. It's a very special card. You know, this is not something that I would mass produce, but it does cover a lot of different techniques, as you can see. Now coming back in with the mask and adding a little bit more clear ink and going to emboss that. Now this is double embossing because I've already embossed on both of those. Now we're going to add clear embossing over that. And what's really interesting is it kind of subdued the sparkly gold embossing powder that I had already used, which turned it into a real vintage look. And it lended itself very well to this project, and it turned out absolutely gorgeous. But here, now we need to make this project come to life. And this is where the magic happens. I'm taking some green tea ink as well as eucalyptus, both colors in the spa line with the Catherine Pooler inks. I have a tendency to sometimes use Catherine Pooler, sometimes I use Distress. But really, honestly, if you have just one over the other, expand your rainbow, fill the gaps in, and really give yourself some tools to have a really, really nice, expansive line of ink. Doing a little bit of cornering here with the icing on the cake, and then we're going to mat that onto white eventually. First, I'm taking the Nuvo clear ink pen, and I'm just going to fill in those ornaments because I have it on the one, but I needed it on the other two. And you can see here, this card is just really, really stunning. I love how this turned out. It really has that vintage feel to it, and it worked really, really well. Just going to attach it with some glue, and here's just a little tip. I always put a heavy block on that. And I've done all this work. I'm going to use a Misty to put that sentiment down for sure. Every now and then you just need a great card, and this one is that. Here's the Mondo poinsettia. I am so sad it just retired. They do still have some of the dies. If you have the stamps that you don't have the dies, there's only a handful left, so be sure to get them over at Ellen Hudson and tell Ellen, bring it back, bring it back. This is a great stamp set, but any poinsettia stamp set will do. Penny Black has some wonderful ones. awesome background stamp by Unity Stamps. I think it was designed by Brutus Monroe for Unity. I love this background stamp. It's fabulous. This is how I do my background stamps. Upside down, and I burnish with a piece of copy paper. There's no better way to stamp a background stamp. I challenge you to tell me in the comments a better way to stamp a background stamp. And don't tell me a stamp platform. It's not the same. This is definitely the easiest and best image you'll get. But look at that. All those bold Merry Christmases. I love it. We're going to use it in another way later on. And here's another great like wooden plank background. This one's by Concord and Ninth. Nice big stamp. It's a clear stamp, which is not my preference for background stamps, but I really love the design. I love everything they do over there at Concord and Ninth. How can you not, right? They're probably one of the more inventive companies. Gotta do a little bit of, blending there on the edges with my scrapbook.com tool. Also gonna come in with the blending brush. You can do it both ways. I like the tool better. And then I've got some classic cardstock. I love these colors. Old Olive and Cherry Cobbler from Stampin' Up. I still have a ton of it, and honestly, I would still buy it. It's wonderful cardstock. Look at how long it takes me to figure this out. I thought I'd leave this in for you. Has this ever been you? Literally took me 1 minute, 9 seconds to figure that out. I know you're laughing because you've been there. I know you've been there. Once I got that matched up, I'm going to go ahead and drop down some anti-static and emboss this with the scrapbook.com embossing ink. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp my images onto the cardstock. We're going to go ahead and do a little bit of embossing with the Sparkle Gold Embossing Powder by Wow. Metallic Gold Sparkle. I love this stuff. Look at those sparkles. Can you see that? I mean, they're captured so nicely on the camera. They're like little flecks of gold. This is like the most amazing embossing powder. Do you know there's anti-static in those bottles too? Love Wow. Use them. I always use a palette knife to help lift those so that I'm not touching them and rubbing anything away. And then I also use my craft tool by Tonic to always hold that in place when I'm embossing it. You can see very quickly just stamping kind of like a tone on tone. I think I stamped a eucalyptus onto that olive paper, just finding the arrangement that works. I wanted these to be a little different from each other, finding where those are going to be. Gonna stamp a few sentiments. Like I said, this card's going really fast. Now, of course, in real life, it took about 15 minutes, but I think my video portion is like just over 3. Gonna do a little bit of edging here because I want that to match my background. It's important to carry those little touches throughout your card for continuity and just balance. And I went ahead and stamped part of that background stamp, cut it out, popped it up, gluing one flower down, popping the other one up. Of course, those leaves are glued to that flower using all those little adhesive squares that I have from scrapbook.com. Love those huge sheets. And there you have it. Quick, easy, simple, awesome, beautiful cards. Bring Mondo Poinsettia back, Ellen. Spotlighting is putting emphasis on one particular part of your project. We're going to take the linked up stencil, and you can see I'm using some painter's tape here just to kind of almost feel like I've got a mask going on. But what I'm doing is I'm tracing parts of the stencil onto my painter's tape, and then I'm going to cut that out. Then I'm going to end up taping that to my stencil, and there I'm able to isolate a particular image or part of the stencil. I'm also going to create a second mask using sticker paper in the same manner. You can see the reason I have 2 is one is going to be used with dye-based ink and one is going to be used more with an embossing ink, which is a little bit more stickier. So you can see here I traced the image onto my sticker paper and then poked a hole from the center I can cut just the image out, and there I have a great mask. Now, in order to continue with our project, I just need some colorful inks that I want to highlight. And I decided that I wanted to really kind of go with a Christmas theme because when I see this image, I think Christmas ornament. So now that we have our 3 ornaments, we're going to take our other mask. And if I were to do this a second time, I might not use painter's tape. I might just do it both with the sticker paper, just for ease of release off the stencil. Using my Wow embossing pad to just really get that inked up really well through the stencil, to put on some clear embossing powder and heat setting it really quick. So you can see that we've got the 3 ornaments there. Now I'm going to take that same linked up stencil and draw 3 more, and I need to cut 3 masks because I want to mask off our 3 ornaments to help preserve the white that is in the non-shiny side. So, you know, we have our ornaments that we put the embossing ink through and we embossed in clear, but the negative part of the stencil, the part that provides a pattern, that part is not embossed. So I want to protect that because in the final product, I want to actually have that really be an emphasis, because that is really what helps the spotlight to kind of sing on the project. So just kind of positioning that, and I'm going to position all 3 before moving on to the next step. So now that we have all 3 covered, we're going to put the stencil back and just kind of lining up the pattern with the part that I can see through there, as well as the actual, you know, masks themselves. Going to secure that back down, and now we're going to come in with some eucalyptus ink, which is a really great ink by Catherine Pooler. I love this color. It's kind of like an artichoke or an olive-y kind of green. I really enjoy the spa line color of inks, but this green is my favorite. It's one that I gravitate to. Obviously, you've seen that in many videos. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of a fade out technique here, just leaving the 4 corners somewhat white to kind of help bring the viewer into the, you know, the project. So now coming back full strength with the green tea without a stencil, and that kind of provides a little bit of a pop. Green tea is a little bit more of an olive color, and it kind of provides a little contrast, and it really made the project sing. Remove those masks, and look at that. I mean, it looks great. Just trimming it up really quick before adding some finishing touches, before adding it to our card base. I like to just trim it down a little tiny bit. Gonna edge the corners with my embossing pad and a little bit of gold embossing powder, just for a little bit of flair. You know, it's just one of those little tiny finishing touches that I've been doing literally for 20 years. But now we have 3 ornaments that are just kind of sitting there on the page. I'm taking the Ranger clear ink marker, and I'm just going to take the edge of a stencil. You can take a ruler as well. Just did a little bit of anti-static there to make sure that our powder doesn't stick to places where it shouldn't. And I'm going to add some little string going to the top. You could do this with real string as well. Heat set that, and now we have 3 ornaments dangling down, and it's just really pretty. I like the linked up pattern there as well. Love how this turned out. I have to say, I did save the best for last. So I love scenic scenes. So you saw that I had cut out a couple of masks from some sticker paper, and I kind of positioned my stamps around from this great stamp set by Stamplerations. Nice, great, good sized images. I've got some new ink blending brushes that I got off Amazon. You know, these look very similar to the ones that I saw on Simon Says Stamp, and I would be surprised if they were any different. The only difference was they were literally half the price. Don't ever buy blending brushes from a stamp company. I love stamp companies, and you know, they put out phenomenal products, stamps, inks, great things that they design themselves. But all these brushes, they come from China. You can get them on Amazon for 50 to 80% less. So save your money, you know, buy stamps, buy ink, buy the things that you can't get anywhere else. I'm going ahead and I'm ink blending some various colors here. And one of the things that I'm doing is just really concentrating my coverage in certain areas. You want to build depth. So that's on the other side of the dune. I was getting a little frustrated because I was having a little, not quite enough control, and I wasn't enjoying that brush as much. So I switched to my Domies by scrapbook.com, and I have a lot more control there. I'm adding a lot more spot ink blending, and I'm going to pop a link to another video where I'm doing a winter scene, and I go a little bit more in depth into how to do those. Just for those of you who maybe have not seen that, I'm going to pop that in the upper right corner. You can see here I'm actually bringing these up quite a ways. You know, sand dunes are all really much the same color, so this is just slightly different than ink blending snow. But you can see here we want the most concentration of color right at where that little ledge is, because that's where the shadow is going to be. So I'm going ahead and intensifying that. You don't necessarily need to go all the way across, but look at that. You can see now the depth. Now I didn't connect my ink blending. And when you're doing dunes, it's very important that you don't connect the ink from one side all the way to the other. You can see how I kind of left that gap. And gonna add this other little piece. This is also an important piece because you have to go up the dune to go down the dune. So you want to kind of think of that when you are building your scene, adding a little bit there to the corner. Now, once we have filled in the sky, I am going to come back and add a super, super light kind of blend of ink over that to kind of give it a little bit more of a yellowish tone, because it did end up being a little too white, but you won't really be able to gauge that until you're further into the project. If you would like a very detailed tutorial on this, definitely check out Patreon. In the Artist Circle at that level, they have this tutorial with crazy detail and a lot more instruction. So if that's something you're looking for, definitely check that out. The link is below. Now I'm adding a mask here, and I did mask off my little Bethlehem there and wanted to leave that in white for a little contrast. So that's why we have that masked off. And then we have all of the sand masked off. So now I'm going to come in with a little bit of limoncello. I really love limoncello. Limoncello is a beautiful shade of yellow. This is in the Party line by Catherine Pooler. I don't mind mixing Party and Spa. You can see I'm mixing Distress and Catherine Pooler. To me, get Distress ink, get Catherine Pooler, expand your rainbow. It's a fabulous, fabulous line to have both of them, because they have gaps. Each of them have gaps, and the other one fills that. So I added a little bit of Coral Cabana, then added quite a bit of pixie dust, as well as a little picked raspberry in there. And at the very, very end of this tutorial, I have one that has some other colors. And wow, what a difference. I did just teach this in a live class, and it was so much fun to see how different everybody's skies were using the same colors. So here I added a little bit of acrylic paint, and I've got a very, very hard bristle brush there. I'm just rubbing my thumb across that. Keeping that totally perpendicular to the actual paper is crucial in getting your stars exactly where you want them. I had mine tilted, so the very first kind of amount just kind of went up in a weird kind of motion. You saw me just take a little bit away. And look at this when you take some of that away. Here I'm coming in to add that really, really light amount of yellow. This is just a magical card. I added an anti-static bag there, and now I'm stamping that really big star, which I want to really highlight. So I did a little bit of embossing with the Golden Sparkle embossing powder by Wow. Love this sentiment. It's just so perfect. This is a great stamp set. Adding some Stampscape stamps, because scenes are not the same without Stampscape stamps. I love my Stampscapes line. I am completely not affiliated with them whatsoever. If you love doing scenery, then you've got to visit Stampscapes. I've got a couple of the stamps linked below. Kevin does a phenomenal job actually designing the stamps, customer service, everything all the way around. He's been in business a long time. What's wonderful about them is they're in pieces. I get the unmounted ones, and then I actually add Aleene's tack it over and over onto the back, let that dry, and then they work perfectly. I can use them in my Misty. You can see that I'm positioning them so that I get some perspective in my scene. Without that, the scene is very flat, and I talk a lot more about that in the detailed version of this tutorial. I wanted to keep this short just because we have 5 projects, but I had to include this. It's a scenic scene, and adding a little bit of corners to draw you in, and then I'm going to actually glue it onto a base, and that was it. This project takes me about 40 minutes, and the end result is worth every single minute. Oh, you are so not done. Ardyth has another 5 amazing tutorials for you. I have both her video linked right here, as well as another one of mine if you want some inspiration. Definitely subscribe to both our channels. We both put up a lot of great content, and I think this was like tutorial number 20 or 21 for the season. I hope you've been having a lot of fun. I'll catch you right over there in another video. Bye.